Joining us in studio is political analyst Matlala Setlhalogile to bring you more analysis ahead of the State of the Nation address. As the friend of the anchor, very good morning to you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. You've been listening in as we've taken stock of the significance of City Hall and also gauging some of the expectations or perhaps anticipated disruptions ahead of the State of the Nation address. I mean, Deputy Speaker Newzroom right now speaking about how they've had to cut numbers to ensure that, in line with COVID-19. What have you made of some of the, topics that have been coming out since you've been sitting here?
Thanks, Mpo. I think the first one to highlight, I think a lot of South Africans have been confused for a while since, a fire engulfed the Parliament building in January. I think we need to take, stock of the fact that Parliament is an institution. The building that was engulfed by the fire there in Cape Town is not necessarily the institution itself. A lot of emphasis have been placed on the building as if it, impacts the constitutional responsibilities of this institution, that's Parliament. I mean, we've seen quite a lot, especially with provincial state of addresses or state of provinces addresses, where they've been taken to people. So the emphasis on the building itself, I think it's not necessarily warranted. And secondly, the State of the Nation address is likely to reflect some of the things that for the past few years we've had to listen to the President deliver. And I think some of the January 8 statement points that were made are likely to come out. The 7 apex priorities of the 6th administration are likely to be touched on, especially the first priority, which is economic transformation and job creation. That priority is not going well, as we all know, that South Africa's job unemployment has hit record highs. I think in that aspect, the President will try to acknowledge the challenge that it exists and indicate the types of interventions that have been made to actually facilitate and accelerate job creation. With that regard, I think he will likely make mention of the work that is being done by Operation Vulandlela, an initiative between the Presidency and National Treasury. That intervention or initiative, it's aimed at network industries. They deal with spectrum allocation, energy sectors, transport, and all of those. So from that as well, the interventions in the energy sector are likely to receive emphasis, especially when we as a country require energy security. Another aspect that the President is likely to highlight on is small, medium, and micro enterprises. I mean, SMMEs, even according to our National Development Plan, were earmarked to create most of the jobs. But that sector has received somewhat, less than the desired kind of support. So the President is likely to place emphasis on that. And what would be different this time around, especially, taking from the learnings of COVID, would be the informal sector.
I want you to hold that thought. I think it's an interesting one to move on to in a short while, but we will be continuing with the build-up on expectations from the State of the Nation address. Let's continue the conversation in studio with political analyst Matlala Setlhalogile from the University of the Free State, who brings us more analysis. Well, you've been listening in to some of the points that have been coming out. One thing for sure is definitely the economy, which comes to the forefront as these discussions are underway, and the issue of immigration, which was very recently linked to the economy, with the South Africans on the ground saying they're fed up and they believe that foreign nationals are snatching their jobs. That was a burning point a few weeks ago.
Thanks, Mpo. Firstly, I'm not from the University of Free State. I'm from the Wits School of Governance.
I do apologize for that.
Not a problem. Look, the issue of illegal immigrants is multifaceted. Firstly, it speaks directly to the inability of the public service to enforce the existing laws. It also touches on corruption within the public service. I think a lot of people would know that Home Affairs is one of the most corrupted public institutions. Thirdly, the inability of our government to introduce interventions that can ignite and resuscitate our economic activities to levels that are required to deliver the levels of economic growth required would also add to the discontent that many South Africans are engulfed with currently. I do expect the issue to be addressed because you'd remember that, funny enough, that you just had a chat with Herman Mashaba. Herman Mashaba is one of the leading voices on placing that, the issue of illegal immigration on the policy agenda of South Africa. Since he was the city of Joburg mayor, he has gone about it, and we saw the issue receive attention from the Department of Home Affairs, I think about 2 weeks or so ago. So that issue is firmly on the agenda. And then there's another aspect. We have seen formations around the country that are non-state actors for that matter go around saying that they're dealing with illegal immigrants in the country. That is an indication of a collapse in the ability of our public institution to enforce the law. Firstly, had the Department of Home Affairs dealt properly with what the legislation requires, we wouldn't have the number of illegal immigrants we have in the country. And secondly, when those laws are broken, it should be the purview of police and other law enforcement agencies to actually ensure that those who break those laws are held accountable. But because our law enforcement agencies are found wanting, people have taken some sort of a vigilante approach to, solving such a challenging issue. And that could be very dangerous for us because we don't want a culture of vigilantism to pervade in our society.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I have been talking throughout the course of this morning. You touched on the importance of what President Cyril Ramaphosa will have to say when it comes to SMMEs and the township sector, the informal sector, which will really speak to some of the cries that we're hearing. I mean, we've heard so far about 3 young people speaking to Belani, speaking about how government seems to not understand the issues that young people are facing.
Yeah, Mpo, I think firstly let's make a distinction. In terms of the township economy, by virtue of a business being a township business does not necessarily render it informal. But on the issue of informal businesses, a lot of focus in government has went into formalizing rather than support provision for the informal sector. Look, evidence across the globe indicates that informal sector or informal SMMEs have a huge socio-economic impact. They are a source of income for a lot of families, especially in the context like ours where a high employment rate has characterized South Africa for quite a number of years now. In terms of the township economy, I am aware that there are plans within the National Treasury, especially through the City Support Program, and other initiatives, and the DTIC, and looking at revitalizing, abundant industrial parks. But the pace of delivery has been rather lethargic, mainly because we are producing graduates, but the level of skills or the type of skills that we produce as a country are not necessarily the kind of skills that are required in the labor market. And the skills mismatch issue is not a new phenomenon in South Africa. You'd remember that in the mid-2000s, when policies such as GEAR and ASGISA were introduced, one of the reasons that we had to relook at those socio-economic policies was exactly because of the very same issue of a skills mismatch. The focus now will rely mostly on industrial jobs. Hence, you'd remember in 2020 October when the President introduced the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, they focused on industrialization through localization. The main aim of that is to ensure that government makes interventions in sectors that are labor intensive. So I would expect tourism, agriculture, mining to an extent. I remember a few years ago the President noted the mining sector as a sunshine industry.
Yes.
And a lot of people were quite shocked. It's because of the nature of the mining industry. It tends to be a bit labor intensive in the South African context. So I would expect the President to look at those sectors that are labor intensive as a mechanism to absorb the lowly skilled or incorrectly skilled in terms of the mismatch that the skills they have and what the labor market requires to absorb some of their unemployed youth.